First of all, I need to apologize for the video I created yesterday and uploaded on LinkedIn, but I simply don't have the time to answer all comments. There are almost 200 comments as of now in less than 24 hours, and I do have a job I need to do. That doesn't mean I don't read your comments. I try to read every single comment, and I appreciate all the comments. When that is said, let's get on to today's subject. Let's imagine I get a new client with a specification for a new app. The client might be, for instance, a telemarketing company, and they need a natural language AI chatbot, which allows them to log conversations they are having with clients. So we're talking about two tables in a database to persist this information. We have a contacts table, which at the very least has a name and a phone number. And then we have an activity table, which is linked to the contacts table, and that contains a summary and maybe a date field for conversations the user had with that particular client. Now, I need to create a database. Then I need to create, in a traditional software development methodology, I would need to create at least two view models. Two C# files, there are maybe 20 lines of code each. Then, if I want to follow our industry's best practices, I'd have to model my class hierarchy first, so I'd have to create my ORM model classes. So we're now up to 4 files. Then I'd need to create mapping configuration. If you're using C# and .NET, you typically use something such as AutoMapper, and maps between your view model and your database model. If I am to follow the rules of Solid, I'd want to separate my concern and create an interface for two different services, at the very least two different services, to perform CRUD operations from within my controller endpoints towards the underlying database. So that would be 10 C# files or at the very least 2 C# interfaces, 2 files. And at the very least 2 service implementations for these files. Now I'd need to configure my IOC container. So I'd need to go and create some sort of like code that makes sure that my service class implementation is constructed by my IOC container for instances of my interface. Then I'd need at the very least 2 controllers to separate my concern, right? One controller for the contacts class CRUD operations, another controller for the activities endpoints. Each of these controller classes would have at the very least 4 HTTP methods. Then, if I'm to follow best practices, I need to create unit tests, okay? At the very least 1 additional C# file containing my unit tests. Probably 2 actually, because I want to separate my concerns in my unit tests too. Now, since I want to follow best practices, I need mock objects because I don't want to touch my database or any I/O whatsoever inside of my unit tests. because touching I/O in indeterministic code is considered an anti-pattern, so I need to create mock objects that becomes the instantiations of my actual services for my controllers in my unit tests. Now, I probably forgot something too, right? There's probably more things I even forgot. Maybe if I want to have, for instance, the infrastructure to apply changes, I'd need some sort of migration script logic inside of the actual app, etc., etc. But the point being that I just described a project that takes a week for even a senior software developer to accomplish. So that senior software developer would probably spend 40 hours to implement that. Let me show you how I would do that thing and solve that task.
Here I am inside of my cloudlets. Let's solve the task. The first thing I'd want to do, I'd want to create a database, right? So let me call one, let me create one and I just name it tests, right? Now I want to use SQL Studio to edit this database and add my two tables, contacts, and then I want to have activities, activity ID. Then I want to have referential integrity from activities into contacts. Then my contacts table should have a name column being of type string, and it should have a phone number being of type string for the record, because even though phone numbers are numbers by the very definition of the term, they might contain plus characters and stuff like that. Then in my activities, I want to have a created field, type date stamp, and I want it to use current timestamp as its default value. Then I want to have a summary field being type text. So now I'm done with the database. Now I'm going to create the code. So I go into endpoint generator. I choose my database here, and I click generate endpoint, and I'm done. This was the part I described earlier in the video that would require, 40 hours of software development and 40 plus files. And what is happening here? If I go into HyperID, I can actually show you what happened here. First of all, it created a new folder called tests, right? And actually, I already had one. But if I didn't have that folder, it would still create a test folder. Inside of this test folder, it created 10 files, 5 for each of my entities in my database. Here you can see, for instance, the invocation of count. Here you can see the invocation of get, etc. And already at this point, I can execute the code directly from HyperID. For instance, if I want to create a new contact here, okay, I can do that. Name, John Doe, phone 555-444-1234. And I've now created a new contact. It's got an ID of 1. If I go into activities post, I can associate a new activity with John. 1, we had a great meeting, right? So now I have 2 records, one in activities and one in contacts. Now remember I said it was the task was about creating a chatbot. Okay, so now I'm going to need a machine learning type, right? So let me create a machine learning type and call it tests, and choose AI agent as my default flavor. Then let me go back into create and into HyperID and then choose this particular module and just click the flash icon here. Choose my test, newly created machine learning test type and just click generate. Then let me go back into machine learning when that part is done. and just click vectorize on my test type here. Now let me go back to manage plugins and install the AI expert system here, which is my front end, and click here and I'm done. Can log in with SSO and Google to the front end, which allows me to use a natural language interface to list entities, list all contacts. And as you can see here now, it's going to do a CRUD read invocation, except I'm not logged in as root. Let me go to my users and roles, because there's an access violation Thomas at. Ainiro, let me associate myself with, I think it is admin, I can't entirely remember. Save. Let me log out and log in again and try again. By the way, you just saw a security feature in case you didn't realize. List all contacts. And now it's invoking the HTTP CRUD hyperlambda file for the read invocation. I want to create 5 new contacts. Use default random. Use random names and phone numbers. And now it's just inserting 5 new contacts, Charlie Brown, etc., etc. Now if I do list all contacts, right, when it's done, okay, it's still executing. And I think maybe probably I might have needed to go to manage machine learning and increase the maximum number of function invocations from 5 to 15. So it's probably actually failed, which is probably why it's waiting forever here. But now if I do list all contacts, and now I gotta pay, right? Because the AI expert system is configured to be used with payments. Let me see if I can get rid of that part. Hi. Okay, doesn't matter. The point is I'm done, right? I'm done. I've just created an AI chatbot that contains all the functionality that I need to deliver the end result to the customer. I'm done. And all the code was automatically generated for me.
You see, code is that. I once had a manager a couple of years ago who had these 2 platforms he wanted me to maintain as a technical lead and manager on 2 different projects. And one of the platforms had like 200 lines of code, 200,000 lines of code. The other guy had like 1.5 million lines of code. And both of these projects had been maintained by like 50 to 100 developers over a period of like 15 years. And he would use that as an argument for that the projects were valuable. They had value. And I'd be like, you know what, that's exactly why they don't have value. Code does not have value. Code is that. And the reasons for that is because you need to pay others to maintain code. So the less code you manually create, the less debt your employer accumulates.